Good morning, everybody. This module deals with lesson 2 in the text from Imprints 3 for BSc, BCA, FAD students of Bengaluru Central University. The objectives of this lesson are as follows. This particular lesson deals with an extraordinary love letter. It is extraordinary because it is written to a person who is no more, who is dead and gone. So, when you're writing a letter to a dead person, it seems to be quite out of the ordinary, and it tells you how grief and separation can be managed through written modes and means. It also hopes to examine how letter writing itself, which is a very important form of communication, is a creative genre. People generally speak of, letter writing as a disappearing medium because of the email. But even if you write an email, it is still a letter, please note. You are using a different medium, but the content more or less remains the same. So it hopes to examine letter writing as a creative genre. And it also hopes to explore how, when there is irreversible separation, one means of handling grief could be articulating our feelings through the written mode. So, in that sense, it could also interrogate whether letter writing actually could help us mitigate our grief. It also hopes to comprehend how uh, this irresistible metaphysical reality, that is, the living person will have to contend with irreversible separation. And how do you accommodate such things? And how do you continue loving a person even after the person is no more? It examines and comprehends this aspect of a person's life. And most important, it gives us a small introduction to the human side of an iconic scientific genius. So at the end of this, these are the objectives. At the end of this, what is it that we hope you students would be able to take from this lesson? First and foremost, there is a public image of Feynman and a private image. The public image, which is consumed through books and merchandise of the Feynman industry, seems to be very humorous, light going, carefree, to the extent that you may not take him seriously as a human being. But this letter tells you something different, the private side of the person, and how intensely and democratically he loved Arlene, his beloved, and how he considered her to be equal in every sense of the term. So you are also comprehending the changing perceptions of the world after the Second World War. After the Second World War, uh, it was presumed that women will be at home and do the work at home, and they really do not have much by way of cerebral contributions. But Feynman's letter completely erodes all those stereotypes. And by the end of the lesson, we should understand how sometimes feelings which are intense helps us to do extraordinary things, out of the ordinary things, and how human beings dare to do something different, and that courage makes all the difference between an ordinary human being and an extraordinary human being. And you should also, by the end of the lesson, understand how another person's life, when there is love and compassion, it helps us cope with many tragic sides to life. To do this, we have to empathize with the person. Empathize means putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and understanding what they actually go through. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is just looking at the person and feeling sorry for him. Ayyo, papa, another. But empathy goes one step ahead and one step further. You put yourself in the person's situation and experience what the person goes through. That is a very important part of your emotional makeup and component, your emotional quotient. It is necessary for us to understand how to empathize with people and situations in order to improve our emotional quotient. Then, comprehending how the tone of the author seems to be very casual, but it is deeply sarcastic because he's comparing the living with the dead and feeling that, the living cannot match up to the dead. He's making a very critical comment on the people around him, on the company that he has. And finally, the letter should help you to explore not only the depth of a person's love, but also the significance and the relevance of complete separation and how people handle this separation. So let's come to Feynman. To understand a great iconic person, we generally go to certain anecdotes or quotes by the person. Look at what he says. This completely underlines Feynman's personality. I can live with doubt and uncertainty. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which may be wrong. This is in a nutshell Feynman as a scientist and as a philosopher. It is better not to know than to know wrong things and live by wrong things. So that tells you he is committed to truth and truth only. He would prefer to live with doubt than live knowing things wrongly. That shows you his commitment and underlines his personality as a scientist. This is Feynman for you with our line, whom he wrote this love letter to. So let's look at Feynman, the person. He was a kind of a maverick, a very different human being, versatile personality, who broke all stereotypes and lived life on his own terms. In his younger days, he was so interested in science that he did any job related to science, fixing radios. He even, went around cracking safes, breaking them just for the fun of it, not to steal or rob, But it was a challenge, and he wanted to take up the challenge and succeed in it. He also, of course, helped making bombs, the atomic bomb in the Second World War. A man with no mean intellectual caliber. He was a graduate from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is the address for brilliant minds. He mastered a perfect score, that is, like 10 on 10, in the toughest math exam for graduates programs at Princeton University. Out of out Antirala, he got that. Developed his ideas in quantum mechanics at Princeton University. That is, even when he was learning, he developed these ideas of quantum mechanics. Of course, all of you know that he is a Nobel physicist. He is a much like professor of undergraduate physics at Caltech. He worked as a professor, but he broke all the stereotypical, the regular images of a suit clad, proper, prim professor. He was very different. He would not really care about, being suited and booted. What was important to him was the academic challenges, not the appearance. He played bongo in Brazil. He was a very casual person. He was not an ivory tower intellectual, sitting in boardrooms and, dressed up always in a very formal attire. You find many such people even today in Harvard. So, what were his scientific contributions? As you all know, there's a whole branding has taken place about Feynman. So, you must be knowing Feynman merchandise because he was a very influential theoretical physicist. Why did he become influential? Is because he popularized science at a time after the post World War, Second World War, uh, when science was only confined to universities. You found this man trying to bring it to the common man by writing articles and essays. So he popularized it, and that is why he is well known as a theoretical physicist. And he is known for the in the path integral formulation of quantum mechanics, the theory of quantum electrodynamics. He made seminal contributions to the development of quantum electrodynamics, which made him, obtain the Nobel Prize. So he became one of the best known scientists in the world, and he was called the Great Explainer. Why was he called the Great Explainer? Because, as I just now told you, he was the one to bridge the gap between the science and non science world. Common men found it difficult to understand the formulae and the concepts in physics in scientific terms. So, through anecdotes, through illustrations, through simple examples, he made it very easy for people to understand tough concepts in physics. That is why he is known as the Great Explainer. As I just now said, he assisted in the development of the atomic bomb. And under the Rogers Commission as a member, he investigated the Space Shuttle Challenge disaster. This is a very important thing. You see, a brilliant mind cannot limit itself only to science or physics. He found, that a lot of errors would creep in, minute errors in the working of a shuttle or a space craft, because there was a gap between the engineers and the managers, the scientists and the other personnel in the department. So he was a person who understood that there was some communication gap, and this resulted in a lot of technical errors. So, it tells you how astute a genius he was, not limited only to science. He was so deeply observant of many other things. One of the few persons who blended literature with science, you have another person called Stephen Leacock, who was also very humorous and an extremely brilliant mind, who combined economics and literature. In the same way, you have Feynman, who combined science and literature. Surely you must be joking, Mr. Feynman. Who stole the door? These are all very popular works of Feynman. It would do you good if you could read them up, because there is a great insight as well as wonderful sense of humor in these books. They've become very popular. Though his profession was limited to science, his expressions were so lively and humorous that he is accepted in the world of literature too as a writer of some standing and merit. I was just telling you that he became an iconic figure and a whole lot of merchandise is created around Feynman. So you can see t-shirts on Feynman as a great explainer, and you see this caricature of Feynman. So a man who achieved a great deal through his contributions not only to science but also to literature. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.